Welcome to this podcast. I have with me Professor Unnati Naran. She is an assistant professor of marketing at Guy's College of Business, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Professor Unnati did her bachelor's in commerce from Shriram College of Commerce. Then she pursued her master's from Delhi School of Economics. And then she went on to do her PhD from Texas A&M University. And professor's research examines how consumers' use of mobile apps affects their behavior in online and offline retail stores. And her research has been published at Marketing Science, Journal of Marketing Research, and the Journal of the Academy of Marketing Sciences. Welcome to this podcast, Professor.
Thank you, Manhar. I'm excited to talk to you about my research today.
Yeah, thank you for agreeing to be a part of it. Yes, Professor. So, in terms of data science toolkits that are used in marketing, could you, walk us through with the 2, 3 examples as to what sort of, data science toolkits are used in, marketing research, Professor?
Sure, absolutely. So, when our marketing is a very applied discipline. So in marketing, we borrow methods from all kinds of other disciplines such as psychology, economics, computer science, and even neuroscience for that matter, to answer relevant questions. So the real emphasis of marketing is it's an applied discipline, and we want to address questions that are managerially important, that companies can actually learn from and implement. So when you ask me about specific data science tools, I particularly specialize in quantitative marketing. There's another branch of marketing which is more consumer behavior oriented, where researchers look at the psychology of marketing. Here, in my case, I primarily use methods from econ and computer science, including causal inference. So in the last few years, there's been a huge growth in causal inference-based toolkits, including experiments, quasi-experiments, and combining that with typically prediction-based methods like machine learning, deep learning. So those are some toolkits that are now available more and more to marketers.
Okay. So, in terms of, the causal, the growth in, understanding the causal relationship, Professor, do you, have in mind any one particular example in marketing, where let's say, the objective has been to derive causal relationship, like how change in one variable, cause affects or causes, change in another variable in marketing?
Yeah, so I can give you one example from my own research. In my dissertation research, I wanted to examine the causal effect of launching a new mobile app by a large-scale branded retailer, and how would that affect shoppers' purchases, not just in online and digital channels, but also in stores. So you can think of large retailers like in the US, you have Macy's or Kohl's, Walmart. How would, if these retailers launch their own branded app, how would the availability of that app, you can imagine some shoppers use it, some don't use it, but overall, how would launching a new app affect shoppers' purchases as well as product returns in online and offline settings? So to answer this research question, I used quasi-experimental methods where there is a launch of an app at one data point or one day or in my data period. And then I have to examine how much does the relative change in those shoppers who adopt the app differ from those that don't adopt the app. And as you can imagine, this is very self-selected as a decision. If shoppers are more loyal or more likely to purchase, then they're going to adopt the app. So there's all this problem of endogeneity, which makes it hard to make any causal claims. So then combining that with methods like propensity score matching or Heckman selection using some kind of instrumental variables, those are the toolkits economists have traditionally also used. And so I rely on those methods to then be able to say what causal claims can be made. And I find that, in fact, after controlling for all these selection concerns, there's still a 30% net increase in purchases, not just online, but also in offline stores once a retailer launches a new branded mobile app for shopping.
Okay. Okay. So the toolkit that you used here were instrumental, variables, which is what economists, also, tended to use.
Yeah, and I use difference in differences analysis, which which captures the relative change in outcomes for treated units pre and post the treatment compared to those of the control units which are not exposed to this app, who don't use this app.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And I think if you know last year's Nobel Prize was
Yes.
awarded to David
Joshua
Carr,
Henry.
Josh Langrest, Guido
Yeah.
Imbens for these types of
Yes.
observational methods.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So, Professor, we now come to your two research papers, which is mobile app marketing, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
And how mobile app introduction affects online and offline purchase and product returns. Yes. So you have two papers, Professor. Is that correct on this?
I have several papers, but these two were part of my dissertation. And then I've done some follow-up work on in-store shopping. In addition to mobile, I've looked at in-store kiosks. I've also done some work on digital platforms like Coursera, how
Okay.
customers engage on those platforms. And
Okay.
finally, I have some new work on mobile apps and how tracking of consumers can increase privacy concerns. So those are some extensions, but you're
Okay.
right. My original work in my dissertation
Yes.
was these two primary papers about the introduction of a mobile app, and the second one was about what happens
Yes.
to purchases if there is a mobile app failure due to
Okay.
which shoppers are not able to use the app.
Okay. 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 So I mean, it actually sounds, very interesting. So this is what's happening, across, the market where shoppers, design their app in order to lure, customers and clients to, buy their product. So could you, ma'am, give us more insight in terms of, these two research papers?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So the first one, as I was describing, was about the introduction of a new app where I use quasi-experimental methods. So just imagine a retailer like Walmart launches a brand new app. I'm able to measure at the individual level how purchases and product returns changed for shoppers who started using this app over an 18-month period, pre and post the launch of the app. The main finding here that's of interest
Mhm.
is that the net purchases, even after accounting for returns, increase by over 30% once an app is launched. But we do see more returns though. So mobile apps can make people more impulsive. And I show in the paper, this is a paper with Venki Shankar at Texas A&M, and we show in the paper that apps can also make people more impulsive. So there is some trade-offs that retailers have to manage, but overall, the net effect is positive for both online and offline shopping.
Mhm.
And then my second paper, I started wondering about, sure, launching a mobile app can help retailers improve purchases, but
Mhm.
a lot of times apps are also prone to failures and outages. So if you remember last year, October,
Mhm.
Facebook and a lot of its sister apps had a 6-hour global outage where
Okay.
they just weren't accessible. And
Okay.
you can also see in retail, this is very common. Retail apps are the fastest growing categories of apps. But
Okay.
at the same time, if a retail app slows down, there
Okay.
is some anecdotal evidence that purchases can be affected or people's search behavior. If
Okay.
they're using the app to search, they now can't search the app. So that was a motivation for us to look into this problem. We also saw some business articles in the media saying
Okay.
that Amazon could lose $1.6 billion just from a 1-second slowdown of its website,
Okay. Okay.
which is huge for a
Okay.
retailer like Amazon
Yes.
also. And so the second paper came from this idea that if there is an app failure, so there's an outage of several hours, you can't get back into the shopping app.
Okay.
In that case, would it affect purchases, not just online. Sure, you might say, an app fails, now people can't buy online
No,
or in
my
the app.
mind seems to wonder why would the app fail in the first place? Like there's some
Yeah,
technical.
that could be any kind of like technical or server error. So in my example that I'm giving you, we focus on one server error, which anybody who tries to log into the app in a given time period
Uh-huh.
is not able to log into the app because there's a system-wide server failure in the back end. So it's more of a technical reason, but apps
Okay.
could fail for many reasons. If there's a new, like the Facebook failure happened because the SDK, the software developer kit,
Uh-huh.
wasn't compatible. So they had an upgrade, it couldn't work,
Okay.
or they could fail for other reasons, like maybe individual specific reasons, like your network broke down, or you
Okay.
got into the elevator and lost connection to the internet. So there
Okay.
could be all kinds of reasons, but we don't focus so much on individual level reasons for
Uh-huh.
app failure because those can be again driven
Yes.
by the way you're
Yes.
using the app or your own where you're located. So
Yes.
we try to abstract away from that and find this nice, clean exogenous setting in which
Okay.
the app failure is happening because of a backend server failure. So everybody who tries to log in for those 2 hours of the failure
Uh-huh.
experiences this failure. And you can imagine this is a difficult, going back to the data science toolkit, it is a difficult question to
Yes.
answer causally. How would a failure affect purchases online and offline?
Yes.
This is difficult to answer because your your propensity to get the failure could be affected by how much you use the app. So if
Yes.
you're a more loyal person
Yes.
and you're using the app a lot,
Yes.
you're likely to get the failure more. So
Yes.
to deal with these challenges, we need some kind of exogenous variation, which is external to the user.
Yes.
And again, this is challenging because no company will let you do a field experiment to
Yes.
try to induce failures in their apps,
Yes.
even for a subset of customers. So you can't randomize this easily. And that's why in my data, in my setting, I have a 2 hour failure window where we observe an exogenous shock that affects everybody who tries to log in. And
Yes.
then we're able to measure their purchases before and after the failure. And this is
Okay.
a short-term effect. As you can imagine, there's several failures, 5 to 7 failures each year in retail apps typically. So we
Okay.
only focus on a short-term window of 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after the failure. And
Okay.
then we quantify and we show that there is actually a 7% decrease in purchases overall in these 2 weeks after experiencing an app failure.
Yeah. So the retailers actually have a lot at stake in making sure, the app, runs smoothly. As
Right. And especially because retail margins are very low. As you know, it's very
yes.
competitive with
Yes.
e-commerce on the rise. They need to make
Yes.
sure
Absolutely.
they're doing their best.
Yes, absolutely. But Professor, you said that there are also cases when the app has actually not been able to induce or has been failed in not getting the sellers to attract buyers. So what reasons could that be?
Yeah, so I was mostly speaking from the perspective of a technical failure in the app. Then again, there could be
No,
more.
but
I think
I'm talking in terms of, let's say the non-technical failure, where, the app has been designed, but, the app has not been able to garner as much attention as the seller would have hoped.
Yeah, that's another good question. And that's more about new product launch failure more broadly, or failure of an innovative app or a new technology that's launched. I personally haven't done work directly on this
Okay.
topic,
Okay.
but I know there are other papers on this topic that you could look at. Traditionally, obviously, the innovation literature, how the innovation growth, how product diffusion happens.
Okay.
Everett Rogers has a great book about diffusion of innovations.
Okay.
And obviously, Frank Bass model is a very classic model in marketing where
Okay.
you talk about new product adoption. And so some apps work really well, some apps fail, similar to, new products. Some new products do really well, some
Yes.
never get adopted. And
Yes.
then there's also the long tail. Some products, especially in movies and entertainment industry, and video games also, they
Yes.
become blockbuster hits, but most products never actually sell or reach their critical mass. So I think that problem is much broader than mobile apps themselves.
No, but
But if you were
when you
interested, there is
understand why an app is actually doing well, in terms of, let's say any app, then if you understand this very well, then you should, I mean, like you should also be able to then, know why an app, is not doing well. Because in India, there are so many
Right.
apps, being launched, especially in the educational industry, ed tech. And so it's hard for you to know, which is, the real deal. So that's my, thought.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. I think entrepreneurs face a lot of, I think, what we would call demand uncertainty. You don't know when you have a new entrant in an app category, like you mentioned, EdTech. You
Mhm.
don't know if this app will actually hit it off in the market,
Yes.
how it will be received. And, companies do all kinds of things, getting app reviews or making sure apps are marketed if they have any retail presence. I know like pizza delivery companies, Pizza
Mhm.
Hut, Domino's, whenever they first launched their app decades ago, they
Mhm.
would have these special deals that are exclusive to apps to be able to
Okay.
increase the adoption of their apps. I
Okay.
would also point you to work by Daniel Ershov. He's an economist.
Okay.
He's done some work on superstar apps. So if
Okay.
your listeners are interested, they can look at some of his work on superstar apps and how
So
that
this is
affects
Daniel. Daniel, full name.
Ershov. He's at the UCL School of Management.
Okay. UCL School of Management. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yes. So those are some, I mean, there is more research on this domain also. And some app categories by default tend to be more crowded, more competitive. So that plays a role. It's not just about the quality of the app, but the competitive scenario in which the app is operating.
Uh-huh.
And now there's all this concern for privacy as well. So apps that may be asking for a lot more permissions from users, but not giving enough of value, may be at a competitive disadvantage as well. And
Okay.
they may also have regulatory pressures because they can't ask for these kinds of permissions anymore.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
this is a lot, it's a
Yeah.
much broader discussion
Yes.
is kind of my main point.
Yes. 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 Completely. So we'll cut this loose, yeah, and we'll, get to your second paper, right? Uh, you were
So I
discussing.
described the app introduction paper, and the
Yeah.
second paper was app failure. So those are the main ones.
Those are the main sources. Okay. Okay. Any other point, Professor, you think, which, we can, discuss here in terms of your, papers on mobile
Yeah,
introduction? Well, it's a
I
hot
think,
topic.
yeah,
Serious.
I agree. I agree. I think with the app failure paper, one other thing I would highlight is, and I spent a lot of time, this is years of 5, 6 years of research,
Yes, I can
but
understand.
one question I always get from people is, why is it surprising that app failure negatively affects purchases? Shouldn't this be something retailers already know? And so to that, I would like to add one more point that, it might be obvious that if the app fails,
Uh-huh.
shoppers are going to buy less online because
Uh-huh.
those digital channels online is not available, at
Uh-huh.
least through the app. They may
Uh-huh.
still go to the website and make a purchase. But
Okay.
to me, what was surprising in this study is that most of the negative effect is coming from store purchases. So if the app becomes unavailable,
Uh-huh.
it looks like people are buying less in the physical stores of the retailer. So that was something I spent a lot of time exploring. Why is that happening?
Uh-huh.
And one of the main reasons I found is because most shoppers use apps, especially these kinds of branded retail apps, to
Mhm.
search for either product information or to search for deals that they can then redeem in stores. So it was really because of the unavailability of the search function when
Mhm.
the app is failing
Mhm.
that they're now not able to buy in retail stores as much as well. And obviously, you can imagine going to a retail store is much more effort, much more cost associated
Yes. Yes.
compared to just buying online.
Yes. Yes. One point, which, comes to my mind is, so you are talking from a retail perspective. I am thinking in terms of, let's say, any, entrepreneur, which has just started any venture. It can be anything.
Mhm.
And do you think that there is actually a right time for you to, launch the app 6 months now, into your business or 1 year into your business, and you should actually wait for the right opportunity to, have the app in the market and, not go at it too soon. That also could be
Yeah.
reason for you, your app not, doing well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the timing, again, you have to see in light of competition. Are you the first entrant in a category? Do you have that early mover advantage? Or is there already a lot of competition in the category in which you're developing an app? So those are some factors I would consider. And, like Wordle became a very popular mobile gaming
Uh-huh.
tool for a lot of people, and then you would suddenly see more apps like that emerging, which are basically copycat or me too products. So then you have to ask yourself, what is the value I'm creating, and is the market ready for this? I remember I used to be a retail business
Uh-huh.
owner, and so 10 years ago I had a startup with two other co-founders. We were trying to sell musical instruments
Uh-huh.
online. We
Uh-huh.
already had a retail store in Lajpat Nagar in Delhi, but
Okay.
we were trying to go the e-commerce route. But we
Okay.
realized that the market was not ready for it. People were not willing to buy
Yeah.
guitars and drum kits or
Yes.
buy expensive instruments online. But
Yes.
now, if you look back, maybe now would be a better time. So,
Yes.
timing of entry and timing of launching a new product is always multiple factors go in.
Okay. And your app, the objective of an app is to lure, customers to, get them engaged to you. That's the only
So there are
objective.
two main objectives I can think of. One is engagement and the other is purchase. Whether
Okay.
it's in-app purchase or if it's a multi-channel retailer, then maybe the purchase happens in another channel. But typically, you're either engaging customers through the app, and again, that's a problem of its own. We notice that most people download an app but never actually use it. And
Okay.
so I
Okay.
think there's a huge problem of app stickiness. And I had tried to do some prediction related work on this,
Uh-huh.
but it's very difficult to figure out what is it that makes apps sticky
Okay.
versus not. And in
Okay.
some of the preliminary work I did, what I was finding is that constantly updating new content. Maybe you have a new product release or new blog post, or like you're
Yes.
doing new
Yes.
podcast.
Yes. Yes.
Any new content will actually engage customers more,
Yes.
even if it's just a shopping app. So there are some benefits to having content continuously updated that makes the app more sticky
Yes.
compared to a very static app.
Okay. Yeah. So you have to, be at it constantly. Yeah.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you so much, yeah, Professor, um, for giving us an insight into the app world. Um,
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Of course, happy to help. And I think a lot of my work in mobile also speaks to this cross-channel synergies, which there could be positive effects of launching a new mobile app, but there could be potentially some kind of non-synergistic, or you can think of it as a cannibalization effect. So
Yes.
in the past, there's been research, economists and marketing faculty have done research on the fact that there are these cross-channel synergies that are important, which is where data science can help figure out what is a causal effect of maybe opening a new offline store. So there is research by Kitty Wong and Avi Goldfarb that shows that if you launch a new offline store,
Yes.
it can result in decrease in online sales and search,
Okay.
particularly if the retailer has a strong presence in that offline area. But if they don't have a strong presence, then
Uh-huh.
opening of the store can actually increase online store and search. So those are some kind of, intricate nuances of operating in this kind of omni-channel world and trying to do better optimization of your mobile channel.
Yes.
But to me, going forward, what seems to be the most important potential of data science
Yes.
is combining these tools of causality
Yes.
with tools of prediction and machine learning. So
Yes.
in one of my new papers with Fernando Luco from Texas A&M, he's an econ, we are
Yes.
looking at the trade-offs between the value created by apps
Yes.
and the potential problems with privacy, because privacy is compromised. Most apps today can track consumer location constantly. So
Yes.
there could be these concerns about privacy, which we're trying
Yes.
to again capture using a combination of prediction and causal methods.
Yes.
And particularly thinking about when retailers target customers with notifications, how
Yes.
can we make them more relevant, but also less privacy sensitive?
Yes. So I have this one app, for a bank in which I have an account with, and I get more than 50 notification, which is like bothering. So they should also, have some, number, with because we're getting 50 notifications is, just going over the top.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor. I think we are, there in terms of, the time, we had.
Yeah,
Fit.
thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor. And in the future, we can do one more podcast, where you could talk about maybe other data science toolkits and how they are used in, marketing. Which
Sure.
could be linked to your research, which you will, obviously be doing going forward. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. I'll be happy to do that. And also, my website has some articles that I post from time to time on my blog. I
Yes.
also post
Yes.
some of these
Yes.
methods related and
Yes.
topic related posts on Twitter.
Yes.
And finally, I have a Coursera course, which the whole 1 week of that course is on causal tools.
Oh,
So if
wonderful.
anybody is
Yeah.
interested,
Okay.
it's called Applying Data Analytics in Marketing on Coursera.
Okay. Great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor, for letting us know this. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
It
you.
was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.